Isabella Montgomery stepped out onto her balcony, breathing in the fresh morning air that swept up from the Bosphorus. The view never ceased to amaze her. Istanbul sprawled before her, minarets piercing the sky, the water glittering with early light. She'd purchased this penthouse in Bebek 6 months ago, another acquisition in her growing international portfolio. But unlike her other properties, she found herself lingering here long after her business was concluded. She wrapped her silk robe tighter around herself as she sipped her coffee. At 42, Isabella had built her fortune from nothing, transforming a small inheritance into a real estate empire spanning 3 continents. Forbes had featured her last year as one of the most successful self-made female entrepreneurs in America. But success had come with isolation. Divorced for 5 years now, Isabella had grown accustomed to the loneliness that accompanied her wealth. Men were intimidated by her success or only interested in her money. She'd learned to guard herself carefully. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. Her housekeeper, Aishi, appeared moments later. "Ms. Montgomery, your grocery delivery is here." "Thank you, Aishi. I'll be right there." Isabella wasn't expecting a delivery. Usually Aishi handled all household matters. Curious, she walked toward the entrance and froze when she saw him. He stood in her doorway, a wooden crate of vegetables in his arms, his broad shoulders straining against his simple white t-shirt. He wasn't young, perhaps in his late 30s, with sun-darkened skin and laugh lines, framing eyes so dark they appeared black. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing strong forearms, marked with the evidence of physical labor. "Good morning," he said in heavily accented English. "Extra delivery today. Special items you ordered." Isabella frowned. "I didn't order anything special." He checked a slip of paper balanced atop the crate. "This is Montgomery Residence?" "Isabella Montgomery." "Yes, but..." "From Armit's Market. Owner said American lady wanted special vegetables for dinner party." He shrugged. "If mistake, I take back." As he turned to leave, Isabella noticed the contents of the crate. Heirloom tomatoes, of various colors, peculiar shaped eggplants, and herbs she couldn't identify. "Wait," she called. "What are these?" He turned back, a smile breaking across his face. The transformation was remarkable, his entire countenance lighting up. Local vegetables, not what tourists eat, real Turkish food. He pointed to purple striped eggplants. "These make best, Imam Bayilda." "These tomatoes." He gestured to a cluster of misshapen red fruits. "Sweetest in all Istanbul." There was something disarming about his enthusiasm. Isabella found herself smiling back. "I'm afraid there's been a mix-up. I don't have a dinner party planned." "Ah!" His face fell slightly. "My apologies." But Isabella heard herself saying, "I'd hate for these to go to waste." "How much?" He named a sum that seemed absurdly small. As Isabella retrieved her wallet, she studied him more carefully. He was handsome in an unconventional way, with a proud nose and thick dark hair showing the first touches of silver at the temples. "I'm Kamal," he said, as she handed him the money. "I bring vegetables every Tuesday and Friday to this neighborhood. Best quality." "Isabella," she replied, though he already knew her name. "Do you work for the market?" A flash of something, pride, perhaps, crossed his features. "I own small farm outside city. I sell to markets, some restaurants, some homes." He hesitated. "I can bring special vegetables if you like, things you cannot find in stores." Isabella wasn't sure why she agreed. Perhaps it was the earnestness, in his eyes, or maybe she was simply bored with her predictable routine. But as she watched him walk away, carrying himself with the easy confidence of a man who knew his worth, she felt something stir within her. that she hadn't felt in a very long time. True to his word, Kemal returned that Friday. This time, Isabella was prepared, having asked Aishi to stay late to prepare a traditional Turkish meal, using the vegetables he brought. When he arrived carrying another wooden crate, she invited him to stay for coffee. To her surprise, he accepted. They sat on her balcony, the sprawling city beneath them. Isabella noticed how he seemed both awed by and uncomfortable with the luxury surrounding him. His hands, strong and calloused, looked out of place wrapped around the delicate porcelain cup. "You live here alone?" he asked, gesturing to the spacious penthouse. "Yes," she replied. "I'm only here temporarily, for business." "What? Business?" "Real estate development. I buy properties, renovate them, sell them, or sometimes keep them for rental income." Kemal nodded slowly. "You buy buildings in Istanbul?" "I'm considering it. The market here is interesting." She steered the conversation back to him. "Tell me, about your farm." His expression softened immediately. "Small place, 20 kilometers east. Was my father's, now mine. 5 hectares, good soil." He described his life with simple, unembellished words. Rising before dawn, working with his hands in the earth, the satisfaction of watching things grow. Isabella found herself captivated. His life was so different from hers, so rooted in place and tradition. When he spoke of his land, his entire demeanor changed. He became animated, confident. This was a man who knew exactly who he was and where he belonged. Over the next few weeks, Kemal's visits became a highlight of Isabella's routine. She extended her stay in Istanbul, telling her partners she needed more time to research the local market. In truth, she was researching something else entirely: the complex simplicity of the man who brought her vegetables twice a week and stayed for increasingly longer conversations. One Friday in late June, Kemal arrived looking troubled. "What's wrong?" Isabella asked, as they settled into what had become their usual spots on the balcony. "Bad weather coming. Need to harvest early." He hesitated before adding, "Could use help tomorrow." Isabella stared at him. "You want me to help on your farm?" He immediately looked embarrassed. "Forgetting myself. Of course you are busy, woman." "No, Isabella surprised herself again. "I'd like to come. I've never harvested vegetables before." The smile that broke across his face was worth the momentary uncertainty she felt. "I pick you up, 6 o'clock." He saw her expression and laughed. "In morning, Isabella. Vegetables don't wait for city hours." The next morning found Isabella dressed in the most casual clothes she owned. Designer jeans and a simple blouse, waiting outside her building as Kemal pulled up in an aging pickup truck. The vehicle seemed to match him somehow. Weathered, but sturdy, practical. The drive took them along the coast before turning inland, the landscape gradually changing from urban sprawl to rolling countryside. Kemal pointed out landmarks along the way, his pride in his homeland evident in every gesture. When they finally arrived at his farm, Isabella was struck by its modest beauty. Neat rows of vegetables stretched across gently sloping fields. A small stone house stood in the distance, and beyond, hills rose to meet the sky. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. Kemal nodded, pleased. "Has been in family for 4 generations." The work was harder than Isabella anticipated. By midday, her back ached. Her hands were dirt-stained despite the gloves Kemal had given her, and sweat dampened her hair. Yet there was something profoundly satisfying about pulling tomatoes from their vines, feeling their weight and warmth in her palms, smelling the earthy scent that rose from the soil. They worked side by side, Kemal showing her which vegetables were ready to harvest, offering gentle, Corrections when needed. Isabella caught him watching her several times, an unreadable expression on his face. At noon, he led her to the shade of an old olive tree, where he spread a simple lunch. Fresh bread, cheese, olives, and tomatoes so ripe they burst with juice at the first bite. "You work hard," he said, pouring her water from an earthenware jug. "Not what I expected." "What did you expect?" he shrugged. "Rich woman afraid of dirt." Isabella laughed. "I wasn't born rich, Kamal. I grew up in a small apartment above my parents' struggling restaurant. I've washed more dishes and scrubbed more floors than you can imagine." This revelation seemed to surprise him. "How did you become—" He gestured, vaguely, seemingly searching for words. "Successful." She took a sip of water, considering how to explain. "Determination, calculated risks, some good luck, and yes, long hours of hard work." He nodded slowly, reassessing her. "In my village, they say Americans worship money." "Some do," she admitted. "But money itself has never been my goal. It's—" She paused, realizing she'd never articulated this to anyone before. "It's security, freedom, the ability to build something lasting. Like a farm," he said softly. Their eyes met in a moment of unexpected understanding. "Yes," she replied. "Like a farm." After lunch, Kamal showed her the rest of his property. The small greenhouse where he started seedlings, the shed where he stored equipment, and finally the stone house where he lived alone since his father's death 3 years ago. It was simple, but immaculately kept, with worn but polished furniture and faded photographs on the walls. "Your mother?" Isabella asked, pointing to a picture of a smiling woman standing beside a younger Kamal. "Yes. Died when I was 22. Cancer." He touched the frame gently. "She loved this place. No wife, children." He shook his head. "Was engaged once. Long time ago. She wanted city life, not farmer's wife." His expression grew distant. "Can't blame her. This life is not easy." As they drove back to Istanbul in the golden light of late afternoon, Isabella felt a peculiar contentment. Her designer clothes were filthy, her manicured nails broken, and her skin sun-flushed. Yet she couldn't remember when she'd last felt so genuinely tired or satisfied. "Thank you," she said as they approached the city. "For today." Kamal glanced at her, his profile strong, against the setting sun. "You are a strange woman, Isabella Montgomery. Is that a compliment?" "Yes," he said simply. "It is." The following Tuesday, when Kamal arrived with his usual delivery, something had shifted between them. Their conversation flowed more easily, punctuated with comfortable silences. When he prepared to leave, Isabella found herself reluctant to see him go. "Do you ever take a day off?" she asked impulsively. He looked surprised. "Sunday. Always Sunday." "Would you?" She hesitated, suddenly nervous. "Would you show me Istanbul on Sunday? Not the tourist places. Your Istanbul." For a moment, he didn't respond, and Isabella feared she'd overstepped. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "Yes, I would like this." Sunday dawned clear and warm. Kamal arrived dressed differently than she'd seen him before. Dark jeans and a crisp blue shirt that brought out the warmth in his skin. Isabella had chosen a simple sundress, conscious of not appearing too ostentatious. He took her to places no guidebook mentioned. A tiny cafe where they drank tea from tulip-shaped glasses. A spice shop where the owner greeted Kamal like an old friend. Narrow winding streets where children played and neighbors called greetings to each other. They ate simit from a street vendor and walked along the shore where local fishermen cast their lines into the Bosphorus. Throughout the day, Isabella observed Kemal in his element. Comfortable, respected, connected to his community, he greeted shopkeepers by name, stopped to help an elderly woman with her bags, ruffled the hair of children who ran up to him. This was a man embedded in a web of relationships, a stark contrast to her own transient lifestyle. As evening approached, they found themselves in a small restaurant overlooking the water. The owner embraced Kemal and insisted on bringing them a feast. Mesas of all varieties, grilled fish, fresh from the sea, and sweet baklava, dripping with honey. You know everyone, Isabella remarked after their third stop, where Kemal had been. Warmly welcomed. Not everyone, he smiled. But in Turkey, relationships matter. Business is personal. He gestured around them. Mehmet, the owner here, I bring him vegetables for 15 years. His son, I helped with school fees when times were hard. Now the son is doctor. Isabella thought about her own business relationships. Formal, contractual, often conducted through layers of lawyers and managers. That's beautiful, she said sincerely. As they ate, Kemal asked about her life in America, her travels, her business. Unlike many men she'd known, he listened intently to her answers, asking thoughtful questions. There was no hint of intimidation or competition in his manner, just genuine curiosity. The wine and the setting sun cast a golden glow over their table. Isabella found herself studying Kemal's hands as he broke bread. Strong, capable hands that knew how to coax life from the soil. When he caught her looking, she didn't look away. Something unspoken passed between them, a current of awareness that had been building since that first delivery. Why did you come to Turkey, Isabella? He asked softly. Business. She replied automatically, then corrected herself. At first, but now. She trailed off, unsure how to articulate what had changed. Now? He prompted. Isabella took a breath. Now I'm not sure. Everything here feels different. Different how? Slower, more immediate, more. She searched for the word authentic. Kemal nodded slowly. In America, you are important woman. Here, you are just Isabella. There was no judgment in his voice, only observation. Yes, she whispered, and that feels liberating. Later, as they walked along the waterfront under the stars, their hands brushed accidentally. The second time, Kemal's fingers gently caught hers. His palm was warm, slightly rough against her smoother skin. Neither commented on this development as they continued walking, their fingers intertwined. When he drove her home, they sat in his trucks outside her building, reluctant to end the evening. Thank you, Isabella said, for showing me your city. Thanks. You for seeing it, he replied quietly. The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility. Then, with a gentleness that surprised her, Kemal leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was brief, questioning, and when he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. Isabella answered by drawing him back to her, her hand on the nape of his neck. This time the kiss deepened, a slow exploration that left her breathless. When they finally parted, Kemal rested his forehead against hers. Complicated, he murmured. Yes, she agreed. Very complicated. Yet as she climbed the stairs to her penthouse, Isabella felt lighter than she had in years. Over the next few weeks, their relationship blossomed in the spaces between their different worlds. Kemal continued his deliveries, but now they were accompanied by lingering dinners, walks along the Bosphorus, and increasingly passionate embraces. Isabella spent more weekends at his farm, learning to cook traditional Turkish dishes, helping with the harvest, and falling asleep in his arms on the narrow bed that had once belonged to his parents. For the first time in her adult life, Isabella found herself living in the moment, not constantly planning her next move or acquisition. With Kemal, she rediscovered simple pleasures: the taste of a sun-warmed tomato eaten straight from the vine, the satisfaction of physical work, the comfort of being held by someone who wanted nothing from her but her presence. Yet reality hovered at the edges of their happiness. Isabella's business partners were growing impatient with her extended absence. Properties needed her attention in New York, London, Sydney. Meanwhile, the summer was ending, and Kemal's farms demanded his full attention for the fall harvest. "Come with me," Isabella suggested one evening as they lay in his bed, the windows open to catch the night breeze. "Just for a while. See New York. I could show you my world as you've shown me yours." Kemal was silent for a long moment, his hand tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "My place is here," he said finally. "The farm needs me. You could hire someone to manage it for a few weeks." He shook his head. "It is not just work, Isabella. It is who I am." He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. "And who are you, away from this place? Would you be happy as farmer's wife in small village? No fancy restaurants, no important meetings." The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Isabella had no ready answer. She loved being with Kemal, loved the person she was when she was with him, but could she give up everything she'd built? And could he truly be happy in her world of high-rises and business deals? Their idyll began to show strain as summer waned. Isabella received increasingly urgent calls from her office. One major development was facing regulatory issues. Another needed her personal attention to secure additional funding. Kemal, too, grew more preoccupied as his busiest season approached. "I must return soon," Isabella admitted one evening as they sat on his porch, watching the sunset paint the hills in gold and crimson. "At least temporarily." Kemal nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "When?" "Next week." "For how long, I'm not sure." He took her hand, his thumb rubbing gently across her knuckles. "And then?" Isabella leaned against his shoulder. "I don't know, Kemal. I've never felt this way before. But I have responsibilities, people who depend on me." "As do I," he said softly. They didn't argue. Neither raised their voice or made demands. Instead, they made love with a new intensity, as if trying to imprint the memory of each other on their skin, knowing that soon, memories might be all they had. The night before her departure, Isabella couldn't sleep. She slipped from Kemal's bed and went to stand by the window, looking out at his fields, silvered by moonlight. She tried to imagine bringing him to New York, showing him her penthouse, with its spectacular view of Central Park, introducing him to her colleagues, her friends. Would he feel as out of place there as she had initially felt here? Would he resent her for it, eventually? She felt Kemal's presence before his arms encircled her waist. "Can't sleep," he murmured against her hair. "I'm afraid," she admitted, turning in his embrace to face him. "Afraid that what we have only exists here, in this suspended reality I've created." His eyes, so dark and steady, held hers. "What we have is real, Isabella. But love is not always enough." The word love hung in the air between them. Neither had used it before, though both had felt its presence growing. "I do love you," she whispered, placing her hand against his cheek. "That's what makes this so difficult." "Love should not be difficult," he said, turning to kiss her palm. "It should be like good soil, giving life, not taking it." In the morning, he drove her to the airport, their conversation muted by the weight of impending separation. At the departure terminal, Isabella turned to him one last time. "I'll come back," she promised. "As soon as I can." Kemal kissed her, a gentle press of lips that felt like both a promise and a farewell. "I will be here," he said simply. "Where I belong." New York assaulted Isabella's senses. After the relative tranquility of Turkey, the pace, the noise, the constant demands on her attention, all seemed amplified after her months away. She threw herself back into work, addressing the accumulated problems with her usual efficiency. But her heart wasn't in it. Her penthouse, once her pride, now felt sterile and impersonal. The view of Central Park, while objectively beautiful, lacked the emotional resonance of Kemal's simple fields. She found herself missing the scent of earth after rain, the physical tiredness that came from working with her hands, the silent companionship of stargazing from his porch. They spoke daily, awkward conversations, bridging time zones and cultural divides. Isabella described her meetings, her frustrations with contractors and investors. Kemal talked about the progress of the harvest, the first autumn rains, the new calf born to his neighbor's cow. With each call, the distance between their worlds seemed to grow. 3 weeks into her return, Isabella faced a crucial decision. A prime development opportunity had arisen, a historic building in San Francisco that would require at least 2 years of her direct oversight. The potential return was enormous, possibly her most profitable project to date. Simultaneously, her Istanbul team had located several promising properties in the city, including a historic hammam that could be converted into a boutique hotel. If she committed to the Istanbul projects, she would have legitimate business reasons to spend significant time there. But the financial upside was considerably smaller than the San Francisco venture. As she debated her options, Isabella found herself standing before a small framed photograph on her bedside table. She and Kemal, taken on his farm, both sun-browned and smiling, their hands dirty from harvesting potatoes. She barely recognized herself in that image. Hair unstyled, face free of makeup, yet radiating a happiness that seemed to illuminate her from within. That night, Isabella called Kemal earlier than usual. "I miss you," she said without preamble. When he answered, "And I you," he replied, his voice warm despite the electronic distortion. "I've been thinking," she continued, her heart pounding, "about us, about what's possible." "Tell me," he said simply. Isabella took a deep breath. "What if I divided my time? 6 months in Turkey, 6 months here. I could focus on developing projects in Istanbul, legitimate business reasons to be there. And when I'm away, you could visit when your farm allows." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Isabella feared they'd lost connection. "Kemal, I am thinking," he said finally. "This is not what I expected. Is it impossible?" Another pause. "No, not impossible." His voice softened. "For you, I would try this." Relief flooded through her. "I love you," she said, the words coming easier now. "I don't want to choose between my life's work and you." "Nor should you," he replied. "But, Isabella, you must understand. I cannot leave my land for long periods. The farm is not just work. It is heritage, responsibility." "I know," she assured him. "I'm not asking you to abandon it, but perhaps we can find a balance." That night, Isabella slept better than she had since leaving Turkey. In the morning, she declined the San Francisco project and instructed her team to aggressively pursue the Istanbul properties. Then she booked a flight back to Turkey, scheduled for the following week. When she arrived at Istanbul airport, Kemal was waiting, his face breaking into a smile that erased the worry lines from his brow. They embraced among the crowds, oblivious to curious glances. "I didn't expect you so soon," he said, as they walked to his truck. "I couldn't stay away," she admitted. "Nothing felt right without you." That night, as they lay tangled together in his bed, the autumn wind rattling the shutters, Isabella shared her plans. A smaller portfolio, focused on quality rather than quantity. A deliberate scaling back of her relentless expansion. A new emphasis on sustainable development projects that aligned with Kemal's values. "And you?" she asked. "What do you want?" Kemal was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns on her back. "I want to grow good things," he said finally. "In my fields, in my life." His arms tightened around her. "With you if possible. It's possible," she whispered. "We'll make it possible." The path they chose wasn't easy. There were adjustments, compromises, moments of doubt. Isabella's business associates didn't understand her new priorities. Kemal's neighbors raised eyebrows at his American girlfriend, who wore designer boots to help with the harvest. The cultural differences that had seemed charming during their summer idyll sometimes became points of friction in the reality of day-to-day life. Yet they persevered, building something unique between them, a bridge connecting their disparate worlds. Isabella purchased a small house near Kemal's farm, renovating it to include a state-of-the-art office from which she could manage her business remotely. In turn, Kemal hired additional help for the farm, freeing him to occasionally accompany Isabella on her necessary trips abroad. He never felt entirely comfortable in the sleek high-rises and exclusive restaurants of her professional world, just as she sometimes chafed at the slower rhythms and traditional attitudes of his village. But they learned to navigate these differences with grace and humor. 1 year after their first meeting, Isabella stood in Kemal's fields at dawn, watching him work the soil with practiced movements. Her life had changed in ways she could never have anticipated. She had scaled back her business significantly, focusing on quality over quantity, sustainability over rapid growth. To her surprise, this new approach had brought her not just personal fulfillment, but professional respect as well, with her Istanbul projects gaining recognition for their sensitivity to local culture and traditions. Kemal approached, wiping his hands on his worn jeans. "Early for you," he commented with a smile. "Special day," she replied. "Do you remember what today is?" His expression softened. 1 year since I delivered vegetables to wrong address." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "Best mistake I ever made." Isabella laughed. "Was it really a mistake? You never did explain how my name ended up on your delivery list." A mischievous glint appeared in his eyes. "Perhaps universe had plan." "Perhaps," she agreed, leaning into his embrace. "Or perhaps a certain vegetable seller saw a lonely woman on her balcony and invented a reason to knock on her door." Kemal's laugh rumbled against her cheek. "Would you believe me if I said yes?" Isabella pulled back to look at him, surprised. "Did you really?" He shrugged, suddenly shy. "You looked sad, beautiful, but sad. I thought maybe good tomatoes would help." "Tomatoes is therapy," she mused, touched by this revelation. "And here I thought it was fate. Maybe both," he said, kissing her forehead. "Fate needs help sometimes." As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the fields, Isabella reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought her here. She had come to Turkey seeking new properties to acquire, new assets to add to her portfolio. Instead, she had found something far more valuable, a love that challenged her, changed her, completed her. She still maintained her penthouses in New York and London, still conducted business around the globe. But now she had something she'd never possessed before. A home, not defined by luxury or location, but by the presence of the man beside her. A man whose hands could coax life from the soil and love from her carefully guarded heart. "Come, Kimali," said, taking her hand. "I have something to show you." He led her to a section of the field she hadn't seen before, where tender green shoots were just breaking through the soil in neat rows. "What are they?" she asked. "New crop," he replied. "American heirloom tomatoes, from seeds your assistant sent." He looked at her, his expression earnest. "Turkish soil, American seeds. Good combination, I think." Isabella felt tears sting her eyes at the simple metaphor. "The best combination," she agreed, squeezing his hand. As they stood together in the morning light, the unlikely couple, the international real estate mogul, and the Turkish vegetable seller, Isabella knew that regardless of the obstacles still to come, they had already harvested the most precious crop of all, a love that bridged worlds, that honored both their differences and their shared humanity, that proved daily that the heart recognizes no borders, no class distinctions, no limitations, save those we impose ourselves. And in the end, wasn't that the most valuable asset of all?